The Grenfell Tower report has been released. It was released last Wednesday or Thursday. I don't remember the exact date. But they are putting majority of the blame on the fire service. You know, the London Fire Brigade. They're putting most of the blame on the London Fire Service, which kind of boggles my mind.
London for us now. This makes grim reading for the fire service, doesn't it?
It really does, Kay. It's over 2 years now since that terrible, terrifying fire ripped through the tower block behind me, with the loss of 72 lives, 18 of whom were children. And you'll remember at the time there was considerable anger from survivors and people in the local community at how a fire could have spread so quickly at such devastating cost. Now, it really is that stay-put strategy of the London Fire Brigade that comes in for the most criticism. It's a strategy whereby in tower blocks, residents are told to stay in their flats because the fire brigade try to contain the fire into a certain place. Of course, in this case, that wasn't possible and wasn't what happened. But residents were told to stay put for nearly 2 hours. The fire broke out just before 1 o'clock, and that policy wasn't rescinded until 2:47 a.m. The report saying that it should have been rescinded as early as 1:30 in the morning, almost an hour earlier. Now, it also gives some answers as to the cause of that fire. It was a fault in a fridge freezer in a flat on the 4th floor, and it was the combustible aluminium cladding around the building that caused the flames to spread so quickly. Now, Danny Cotton, the Commissioner of the London Fire Brigade, has come into some personal criticism for the way she stuck by that stay-put policy, saying in the inquiry and in interviews as well that she wouldn't have done anything differently, which the report says is deeply insensitive.
So you're not going to blame the government who, you know, every single year cuts back on services, so there's actually less firefighters in the country in the first place. And you're not going to blame the councils for putting cladding on Grenfell Tower, which contributed to the fire spreading as far as it did. But you just want to put all the blame on the fire brigade. Okay, my problem with this whole blaming just one party is you are failing to hold yourself accountable for the whole situation. Now, as I said before, in previous videos that I've done on Grenfell Tower, it's not just one person who's to blame, not just one individual, not just one group of people. It's several groups of people who are to blame. I'm starting from the top. I'm starting from the government, because the government are responsible for council cuts in the first place. It was cheaper to put the flammable cladding on the buildings than it is to put non-flammable cladding on the buildings. That's numero uno. That is the simple fact that when you cut back, people have to cut corners in order to be able to afford things. So then, when a small incident, remember now, the fire started in someone's flat, and then it spread because of the cladding. Yeah, it got out of the person's flat, and then it spread, and then because of the cladding, it just like madness. Now, I don't know about you, but if I've done something wrong, I would hold myself accountable. Despite you lot thinking that us women cannot hold ourselves accountable, then again, you have Theresa May, the former Prime Minister, who was in number 10 Downing Street last week and was actually getting those men together. I mean, imagine Theresa May, having to tell people to stop mocking Jeremy Corbyn for wearing a green tie to, you know, show support and remembrance to those who died in Grenfell Tower, to cut it out and to remember what they're there for. I mean, imagine having to tell the Tory party that, you know, the Tory party that you used to lead. Do you see how things are mashed up when Theresa May, who's not innocent, has to tell you this. Now, I've not had a chance to go through the report in full because it's very big. Now, I'm going to post a link for it down below, but it's a very, very massive report. Like, it is not easy to read at all. Like, I'm still on part 1. And like I said, it was released last week. So that should tell you everything you need to know, right? But my issue is, again, with what I said, is why just the fire brigade, are being blamed. And another thing, they're still sticking to this 72 people died in the fire. That don't make no sense to me. 72 people alone died in the Grenfell Tower. Are we stupid? Now, they said that because the fire was so intense, a lot of people burned down to the bone, and then the bones melted together. If the bones melted together, how can you justify saying that 72 people died? You don't actually know if it's actually 72 people died, or you know it's more people, but you're going to just say 72 people because that's basically how much bone or body parts you was able to find. Now, what would have been the best solution would have you to say in the first place, we are not sure the number of people have actually died, instead of doing this rough estimate, because we are not stupid. We know that it's clearly more than 72 people who died. But you're going to say that it was 72 people and you're going to stick with this? You are mocking the intelligence of people. Another thing that I found disturbing is the survivors of the Grenfell Tower fire. They got the report a day early, but it was leaked. So last Tuesday, it came out that the Grenfell Tower survivors received the report early compared to everybody else. It dropped on Wednesday the 30th. Now I remember. It dropped Wednesday the 30th for everybody else. And it leaked. But in the news reports, which I'm going to show you next, they said that there was a gagging order on place so that the Grenfell Tower survivors can't say anything about what the report contains. But of course, you know, it's always going to leak, because that is what happens with these things. People will leak things, and to be honest, I'm not surprised. I'm actually glad it was leaked today early. Because sometimes when you leave it to like specific dates, then it kind of skews things. You're always wondering like what they have to hide. Now I understand the gagging order because of legislation and all this kind of stuff, but at the end of the day, they have a right to voice their feelings and their frustrations behind what has occurred, because the government is still not holding themselves accountable. The councils are still not holding themselves accountable. They're all blaming the fire brigade as if it's their fault. I mean, I do honestly, and the thing is, the fire killed a lot more people, because one of the rules that the fire brigade gave is that people have to stop in their flats whenever there's a fire that occurs. But they didn't come up with that rule. They didn't come up with that rule. That rule comes from the government. So this is exactly what I'm saying. That rule comes from the government, and obviously the fire service is going to follow the government, because it's the government, the one that comes up with these rules and legislations. They come up with all this kind of stuff, you know, health and safety, etc., etc. So putting all the blame on the fire brigade does not make any sense. They were just following orders. And then obviously the people in the Grenfell Tower, obviously they were following orders as well. But if we're keeping it honest, if the government hadn't come out with that law in the first place, and the fire brigade, or if the fire brigade had said, you know what, we're going to disregard this, tell people to come out of their flats, a lot more people would have survived. But I cannot blame the fire brigade entirely for this whole incident. Anyone who wants to blame the fire brigade entirely has no sense, because the firefighters themselves put themselves at risk to, you know, to try and save as many people as possible. So this whole idea of blaming them solely don't make a bit of sense whatsoever, you know? It don't make no sense. So you don't need to start blaming them entirely. Like, government, hold your hand up high, you know, admit you made a mistake. But you're never going to do that, are you? You're never going to admit you made a mistake. You're never going to admit that you put in that Council Cuts is directly responsible for this incident. You know, like I said, Council Cuts, then you're having to cook, then you have to source cheaper, then you're having to source cheaper materials, and then that leads to a fire of this magnitude. A lot of the people who was in Grenfell Tower were, you know, immigrants. And they're in these high-rise buildings. And the particular borough in London where Grenfell Tower is, it's like you got the rich people on one side, you got the poor people on the other side. It's like there's no middle ground. So then it's like you have these rich people who acting like they don't give a shit, because why should they? You know, it's nothing to do with them. I'm not involved, even though they can see that big burnt out building right across from them, from where they live, in their nice comfy house with their children. You know, nobody has to worry about that. But those people who was in those Grenfell Towers, the people that died, or the people who are still homeless over 2 fucking years, excuse my language, over 2 years later from Grenfell. This happened June 2017. It's now what, November 2019. Why people are still homeless? Like Theresa May, you're no longer the Prime Minister of the UK, but I'm still gonna say to you, yeah, Boris Johnson, the new Prime Minister of the Tory party, right? I'm gonna say it to you, why are these people still homeless? Why are they still homeless? After 2 years, over 2 years, it's coming up to 3 years now. 3 years, June 2020, and I bet you anything those people will still be homeless. Like, some of them had to go stay in hotels, right? Hotels are not supposed to be it's not supposed to be long-term hospitality. It's not supposed to be that. It's supposed to be a temporary thing, you know, like a holiday, or you've just moved out somewhere and you go and stay in a hotel while you look for another place. It's not supposed to be long-term. But some people was in hotels for months, and some people are homeless, and I don't see you getting them getting them accommodation. I don't see you helping them to get in contact with housing services so they can actually have a flat or something, a new flat. I don't see you doing that. All I see you dead focusing on is Brexit. But yet you care so much about Brexit, but yet you couldn't care about the immigrants who perished in that fire. Let me end this video here before I ramble on for too long. But honestly, it really sickened me, this whole incident. It's still not being resolved. We're coming up to 3 years next year, and this incident still hasn't been resolved. Like, oh, what are you, Ross? It's just really, really sickened me. And that is all I can say about it, to be quite honest. The government needs to fix up, pretty much. Because last Thursday we were supposed to Brexit was supposed to be going ahead, but now it's been pushed back to January. And we are tired. We are tired. You can't fix Brexit. You can't fix the Grenfell Tower situation. Now you can't fix the racism. You can't fix the racism in the National Health Service. Just long. I'm tired. Bye.